everyone, and welcome back to another True Crime Tuesday. Yes, it is on Tuesday this time. Forgive the no makeup. I know you guys don't really care, but it is so hot right now. If I put makeup on, it's just gonna melt right off my face. When I walked into my living room this morning, it was 27 degrees Celsius, which is 82 degrees Fahrenheit, and I was boiling all day. Like, most people in Ireland don't have air conditioning, so it's been very hot lately, and I'm enjoying it. It's not like it's gonna last very long here anyway, but it's been very hard to record a video because everyone's been outside making a lot of noise. I've been outside a lot in the sun and just being very lazy, and yeah, just enjoying a few days off, to be honest. So, a couple of reasons why this video is again a little bit late, but yeah, let's just get into it. Today I'm going to be talking about the case of Cati Boyter. So, the story starts with a man named John Blauvelt. I hope I'm saying that correctly. He was born on September 8th, 1988 in Los Angeles, California. As an adult, he moved to Simpsonville, South Carolina, where he became a recruiter for the U.S. Army. After 10 years of military service, he was a very well-respected man. He was very well known in the community, especially with youth. He tried very hard to recruit as many young people as he could to join the Army. And he was also responsible for planning extracurricular activities for prospective service members and trainees. Right next to the Army recruitment office was a sandwich shop, and in that shop worked Cati Boyter. And John kind of developed a little crush on her, and Cati pretty much the same. He was very polite, he was an Army man. Cati's family had a history of the Army. Her grandfather was an officer, and so she kind of always was attracted to a man in uniform. And as soon as he went into that sandwich shop the first day and saw Cati working there, he made it a point to eat there every single day just so he could talk to her. He was very kind and loving to her, and they just seemed like a really, really nice couple. John was 6 years older than Cati. He had already been married and had a young daughter. He was known for being a little bit of a ladies' man, very charming, very popular with women. He also very much preferred the company of younger women. Since he spent much of his time at local high schools trying to convince youth to join the Army, he was surrounded a lot by teenage girls. 7 months after meeting Cati, John divorced his wife. He was actually still married at the time that he met Cati, so he divorced his wife and moved in with Cati. And Cati's niece, who was very close to her, said of John that he would come to get his lunches every day in the sandwich shop. When I first met him, he was in the Army, so I figured he must be a pretty nice guy. Service people are generally known for their politeness and their respect, but Cati's mother had a very different opinion of John. She said, "I wasn't impressed with him when I first met him. Being raised with a military father, I kind of had an idea what it was like to be around military personnel and how polite and courteous they were. John was not like this. He just didn't seem like a military man to me, and I thought that was odd." Their relationship was very rushed. After just a few months of dating, the couple got married and were living together. And this came as a complete surprise to Cati's entire family, especially her niece. Cati didn't tell them she was getting married. She didn't invite any of them to her wedding. Her niece said, because they were very similar in age, that they had always told each other if they ever got married, they would be each other's maid of honor. And that just didn't happen. so they all found it really weird that they got married so quickly and that Katie didn't invite her family to her wedding. I mean, John was barely divorced from his wife when he married Katie, and Katie's niece briefly lived with them and said that their marriage was far from blissful. She said that they very often argued. In heated arguments, she very often had to jump in between them to calm them down. She said that John drank a lot and then became very aggressive, not physically, but verbally. He threatened Katie several times. And Katie always forgave him for his outbursts. She knew that he was a bit volatile, but she always wrote it off to the alcohol and always forgave him. But there was one instance that was the final straw for her. John was known to throw a lot of parties at their house for teenagers, and he would buy them alcohol and drugs and supply it to them. And it was a constant point of friction between John and Katie because Katie was very against this illegal activity and didn't want him to do that anymore. A 17-year-old girl called Hannah Thompson was almost always present at these parties, and John would very often let some of the teenagers stay in empty rooms in the house. Now, Hannah's parents got wind of these parties and called police. When police arrived at the house, John instructed everyone to not let them in, to barricade all the doors. But police ended up finding a back entrance into the house and arrested John for supplying underage kids with alcohol. And this was kind of the final straw for Katie, the fact that he got arrested for doing this. And even though some of them were legally kind of considered to be adults, a lot of them were clearly underage, and in the US, under 21 is underage for drinking regardless. So, while John was being held in police custody, Katie was called into the police department for questioning. They asked her what she knew about her husband's illegal activities, and she told them everything she could. She also made a pretty shocking revelation during that interview. She showed up to the police station with a Magnum gun that she said belonged to John. Allegedly, during one of their heated arguments, John had pulled the gun on her and threatened to kill her with it. She said that he then pointed the gun on himself and threatened to commit suicide. He then grabbed another firearm and threatened to kill all of her family. Before eventually leaving the house, Katie said that he was drunk at the time. So police actually also charged him while he was still in custody with domestic violence. Katie immediately moved out. She moved in with her mother. And then a few days later, John was released from prison on bond, but he had a no contact clause added to that, so he was not allowed to contact Katie. And she was very relieved to hear this. She just wanted to put this whole thing behind her and start a new life, and she wanted to divorce John, and she was looking for a lawyer to help her with that. Katie's niece also moved out of the house that she lived in with her and John. She was very similar in age to Hannah, and they both went to the same high school. And she found out through people at the school that Hannah and John had started a relationship. Now, she wasn't totally surprised at this because she knew Hannah was infatuated with him. And it was known that John liked younger girls, but he was 28 at this stage and she was 17, which definitely raised some eyebrows. Hannah cut off most of her family and friends. She moved in with John, and she didn't really want to talk to anyone from her life anymore. Katie wasn't bothered by the new relationship. If anything, she was happy that John was moving on because it meant that he would leave her alone. She decided to quit her job at the sandwich shop, and so she wouldn't have to run into John every single day because he still worked in the army recruiting office next door. And she started work in a pet store. At this point, things seemed to be going really well for Cati. She loved animals and really enjoyed working in the pet store. And most of all, she was free from her abusive and controlling husband. On October 24th, 2016, her niece called her to see if she wanted to have a dinner date that night. Cati was driving home from work and said that she'd meet her somewhere a little bit later on, but her niece said that she sounded very strange on the phone. When Cati didn't show up for the dinner date and didn't cancel, her niece immediately felt something was wrong, and her whole family did. It wasn't like Cati to not show up for something without letting anyone know. So, by the next day, they had set up search parties to search for her. Like, her family and friends were calling her, instant messaging her, texting her, anything they could think of, and they were getting no response. So they set up a search party to look for her, while simultaneously her mother filed a missing persons report. John even became part of the search party and offered to help look for her. On October 26, 2016, a group of Cati's friends who were part of the search had decided to check out an old abandoned house where they used to hang out as teenagers. To everyone's knowledge, the house was dilapidated, like it was abandoned, like windows thrown out, stuff like that. It hadn't been occupied in over 20 years, but it was a spot that teenagers loved hanging out at. And then, approximately 32 hours after she went missing, her body was discovered in that house by one of her friends. I can't even imagine that you have to find the body of one of your friends. She had been brutally stabbed multiple times and just left there to die. It was obvious that there had been some sort of struggle because she had defensive wounds that she tried to fight off her attacker. And they immediately called 911. Since John was still her husband, police were, he was the first person that police called to inform him. They went to his house to tell him the news, and they found Hannah Thompson there at his house. I said earlier that she moved in with him, but she hadn't yet. At this point, she had run away from home. They questioned both of them about Cati's murder. Detectives said that John didn't seem too fazed by the news of her murder. He didn't seem particularly upset. Now, he said that John was very unemotional when he was notified of her death. I will say they didn't have the best marriage. They were on the path to divorce. Yes, we all know where this is going, but I do feel like it's not always an indicator that they had something to do with it. He was very stoic and just talked about how bad their relationship had been. He said it immediately made the hair on the back of my neck stand up because you could tell that this wasn't somebody that was upset she had been killed. Investigators theorized that John might have killed Cati because he was worried about the upcoming trial for the domestic abuse he had been charged with, and without Cati, they didn't have their witness anymore. It could also have been that he wanted to get out of a divorce so that he wouldn't have to pay her anything. And of course as well, if he went to prison, he would have a dishonorable discharge from the army, and the army was pretty much his life. He was very well respected there, so he obviously didn't want his career there to end. Between the time that Cati had left work and was supposed to meet her niece for dinner, police believe that John tried to convince Cati to meet him and talk about this, and that to drop the charges against him, and that when she refused to drop the charges that he snapped and killed her. They did name him as a person of interest, but they never named him as a suspect because they didn't have enough evidence to arrest him. Just 2 weeks after John and Hannah were questioned, they both skipped town. The U.S. Marshals joined a nationwide hunt for both of them. And police did issue unable to find him. They questioned it, and I find this a little bit strange. They questioned at first whether Hannah had gone with him willingly or whether he had forced her to, but she ran away from home to live with him. I think it was pretty clear from the beginning that she chose to go with him, and they did ultimately confirm that Hannah's mother actually said that her daughter left her cell phone at home and vanished, and that she had erased everything from the phone so that they wouldn't be able to read any messages or be able to find any clues of where they were. She said, "I assumed when she left the phone in the mailbox, it was because she didn't want us to try to find her. Once we talked to the police, we started thinking that maybe she didn't want anybody to see some of the text she had on her phone." Her mother received an ominous text from her a few weeks later. Well, it was from a burner phone, but it was clear that it was Hannah. She said that she was safe and that she was still in South Carolina, but police were unable to trace the source of these messages. At this point in the investigation, they had received tips of people seeing John and Hannah all over the country. They were seen in Arizona, in New Mexico, in California. Some people thought they might have wanted to cross the Mexican border. His car had actually been picked up by license plate readers along the borders of the different states and near the Mexican border. However, Border Patrol officers said that it was unlikely that he actually crossed over into Mexico, but they're not sure. Police also think that John at some point probably switched cars, maybe stole a different car so that they wouldn't be able to track him. A few months after running off with John, Hannah was actually found in a place called Eugene, Oregon. She had family living there, and she contacted them because John had abandoned her. Police questioned her about his whereabouts, but she had no idea where he went after he left her, and that is it. To this day, he has not been found. He's a fugitive. They don't know where he is. I mean, this happened in 2016, and I did an extensive search on this a few weeks ago to see if there was an update, but up until that point at least, he had still not been found. I don't think they still have enough evidence to convict him of her murder, but they obviously know that, or they heavily suspect at least that he did it. I also wouldn't know who else did it. I don't know. I hope they find him one day. I find it interesting that he left Hannah behind. Maybe at 28 he realized that a 17-year-old is not that great to be around 24/7. I mean, at that age difference anyway, they would have had very different interests. I'm not sure. Maybe she was just weighing him down. But it was clear that she did not choose to leave. He abandoned her. So, I don't know. I hope that they find him. If they ever do, I'll give you an update about it. But he's been on the run for 4 years now, so I think it'll be hard to find him at this stage. So, thank you as always so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.